Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin with the video. We have a small update concerning the 7700K, which is of course the successor to the 6700K. The 7700K is part of KabyLake, just to clarify, and continues the succession of 14nm. So just to get everyone up to the same page, today Intel, and by today I mean modern Intel, have adopted a new process technology. It's known as Process Architecture Optimization, which is, I guess you could say, the official way of saying that they had run into problems with the previous tick-tock process. In fact, to say problem was a bit of an understatement, and honestly, even unofficially, people had come to say it was tick-tock-tock at this point. So Intel just adopting process architecture and optimization was just the admittance of defeat in that regard. So what do we know about the upcoming processor? Well, most of the specifications are going to appear pretty similar to what you're used to. So first of all, it is a quad-core processor, which is a bit of a disappointment, and I've mentioned many times over, I feel that right now Intel should do away with that. I honestly feel quad-core, for the amount of money they charged for the 6700K, was a bit of a letdown. Regardless, it's the quad-core design with hyper-threading. Now, currently the chip is clocked at 3.6 GHz and boosts to 4.2, but obviously that's not a major big deal because these are engineering samples, so what they actually end up being in reality, we're unsure. Now, in terms of cache and all of the other stuff, it's very much what you'd expect. You've got 8 MB of level 3 cache, 256 MB level 2, and of course you've also got the graphics core. At the moment the sample is just clocked at 1150 MHz, which is a G2 graphics chip. But obviously your mileage may vary in the end. Now you might say to yourself, and quite rightly so, okay, well, Mr. Internet person, why would I upgrade from a 6700K? Well, obviously you're going to get some improvements in core clocks, most likely towards the end, because this is, let's face it, a more efficient, more enhanced 14nm process. You're also going to get lower TDP, probably, although that's not been confirmed yet. It would be a bit of a shock if it wasn't, if I'm totally honest with you. If you're using integrated graphics, obviously that's going to be a benefit. On the other hand, if you're someone who's going to be putting in a Navi or a Vega, then you probably don't give a shit about that. But honestly speaking, this is, I would go as far as to say, a very small step forward for the desktop side of things. The big benefit, however, is the fact that the motherboard itself, the 200 series chips known as Union Point, is slightly upgraded. So you've got support for the faster DDR4 2400 MHz memory. You've got a very small improvement when it comes to native support of Intel's own Optane, that's Optane if you want to Google it, SSDs, and better flexibility with PCIe lanes, and basically it's bandwidth improvements, which is great if you've got a lot of contention on your system. For example, you're using a lot of different graphics cards, you're using a lot of different SSDs, which, let's face it, some creative individuals will be doing that. So all of that is great, and that's all nice. For example, you know, you've started to see the introduction of Thunderbolt 3 and all of these other improvements from, let's say, Haswell, which is all great and all, but I think it's fair to say that as an actual CPU, it's not anything super duper impressive. So I do also want to touch on the leak, which is the i7-7500U. Now, this one, of course, is a mobility processor. I think it's fair to say that Intel have put a lot of work into mobility at the moment, and the i7-7500U is going to be part of the KabyLake U family. I'm sure you're surprised about that. It's built for ultra-low power platforms. Now, this one is going to be a dual-core, multi-threaded CPU, and it's going to feature a clock speed of about 2.7 GHz base, and it's going to boost up to 2.9. 4 MB of level 3 cache and 512 KB of level 2 cache. Now, obviously, these are probably still engineering samples, so we could still see some improvements towards the very end, and naturally you're going to see improvements to the GPU as well. It's probably going to be running around the 1000 to maybe 1.1 gigahertz range, and the TDP is absolutely going to be titchy, probably around the 15 watts, maybe slightly less. I think one thing that does bug me, and this is a slight aside from the whole point of the video, is I really wish Intel would be a little clearer with the i7 naming conventions, and I've mentioned this in a previous video. While I'm sure most of you who are watching this video are aware that i7 doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a quad-core processor, a lot of folks don't know that, and I've mentioned a couple of times over now that I feel that Intel should be a bit clearer, and I do realise that i7 just represents a hierarchy, so it's almost like, yeah, saying that this is a higher end CPU, but I do wish that Intel were a little clearer on that, and I feel that they should just have something that represents the number of cores at the start or something like that. Anyway, it's becoming more a PR-y number at this point, whereas it used to be a lot clearer back in the olden days, let's say back in the days of Sandy Bridge, or certainly prior to that. I also want to talk about the M7 7Y75 KabyLake Y Core M. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? It's going to be absolutely ridiculously low in terms of TDP. It's going to be about 4.5 watts of TDP, which is absolutely ridiculously low, and it's going to, of course, be a dual core design, with multi-threading enabled, which isn't particularly surprising. Naturally, because it's such a low TDP processor, but still has a lot of cores, something has to give, and in this case it's going to be the base clock and boost clock, which are going to be around 1.3 GHz to about 1.6 GHz respectively. Notice I keep saying around, it's because at the end of the day these are not officially confirmed, so they're engineering samples, so you could see some differences when the processors are finally released. Supposedly we're going to be seeing some early samples of this stuff, particularly for the desktop, arriving in around Computex 2016, but your guess is as good as mine whether they actually do end up for their launch of 2016. Regardless, the particular chips that we're talking about here, which obviously once again are ridiculously unwieldy 7Y75, is going to feature 4 MB of level 3 cache, and it's probably going to be found in very low TDP environments. For example, your normal things such as, let's say, notebooks and laptops and very thin, basically, devices, which is something that Intel are trying to be very aggressive with their pursuit of at this point in time. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.